Hey, it's Pete with the Small Business Resource Center and the Small Business Resource Center YouTube channel, doing a little investigation information about the stock market and stock market fraud. Well, first of all, one of the things that I always like to say is there's always two sides of every story. I talk to some people and they say there's no broad stock market fraud, there's nothing to worry about, blah, blah, blah. People just make bad trading decisions. And other times I look at other people and say there's extreme amount of fraud, and that's the other side of the spectrum. So I'm going to investigate a couple little things and then look at some interesting articles that I've seen and some information, and then give you hints and tips that if you wanted to try to report potential fraud, if you know of any, you have the option to do so. Well, first of all, what's stock market fraud? Stock market fraud is known as securities fraud or investment fraud. In broad terms, it's illegal activities to deceive investors, manipulate markets, and the goal is to trick investors and to make poor trading decisions. So in my opinion, this can be done in several ways. Recently, there was somebody named Andrew Left who is currently in trouble because of the simple fact that what he is being accused of is posting information telling people to either buy a stock. In the meanwhile, he would be selling it. The other thing he would do is maybe tell people stock would go to a certain price, and then of course as people are buying, he would sell, because the idea is to get people to try to run the price up to a price he didn't think was achievable, and as they're purchasing, get rid of all of his shares. Whether that happened or not, I guess it's the courts to decide, but for those who say there is no stock market fraud, well, there's one recent example. Another recent example would be Sam Bankman-Fried, who, in my opinion, didn't do anything on his own, but for some reason he's the fall guy. His parents, who are active in stock markets and all kinds of stuff, even are painting him as a dope. So then again, you have to ask, where's this guy getting his information? How did he set up all this? How did he become, quote unquote, the mastermind? So that's one thing that you got to look at when you're saying this. For some reason, there's always a fall guy, and Sam's unfortunately it probably. Let's look at other cases of stock market fraud. There's insider trading. That would be a scenario where certain individuals are told a stock would be doing good or bad, and then before information's made public, these people either buy a lot of the stock or sell a lot of the stock in the case where it's doing bad, or they could potentially short a stock. There's misstatements. A company can blatantly lie. And the funny thing about misstatements, during COVID, I was doing a lot of researches on stocks. A lot of stocks were making money, and this is certainly just my opinion, but I was following Tesla. Tesla seemed to be doing pretty good. And then there was a company called NIO, and the one thing that I noticed that I actually posted is NIO, which is a Chinese company, and I'm not accusing them or anything, this is my opinion, happen to always have very similar news as Tesla. So Tesla would announce they're doing something, very shortly after, NIO would announce a very similar type of thing. And after a while, I was like, is this company even real? Okay, first of all, there is a show called The China Hustle. It was made in 2017, so that was even before NIO came about. The interesting about this is, and one of the reasons why I'm questioning whether NIO was a legitimate company is because of the China Hustle. I'm going to play this for you. If you didn't see this, you should watch this. It's very, very interesting.
What is capitalism? It rewards those who work hard, but it also rewards those who take advantage of others.
After the mortgage crisis in 2008,
Everybody's looking to get their money back. China's this exploding market.
It blew my mind.
let's invest in it now.
Everybody thought, I want to be a part of the China growth story.
We're making a profit. $22 million, $100 million,
$20 billion.
$50 billion. This was simply too good to be true.
And it was.
There are no good guys in this story, including me.
Over 300 businesses operating in China, listed here in the United States.
Public traded stock.
It was legit.
But I believed they're misrepresenting and doing less business than they had claimed. So we went to China to monitor one of these companies.
Roads in poor shape.
Garbage, rotting.
A busload of investors shows up. All of a sudden, things get turned on. They leave. All the lights go back off.
It's a $150 million company.
It's a total fraud.
If this one company is so brazenly fraudulent,
We have to worry about all of them here in the United States.
this is the largest financial crime of the last 25 years.
We've never seen a credit buildup that hasn't been followed by a major financial crisis.
Hold on to your wallet.
The government knows what's happening.
That money belongs to mom and pop investors.
The reality is they're going to do nothing about it.
The bad guys in finance are attracted to greed.
I didn't do anything wrong, so I want out of this.
You can't even find people that will help us.
The best place to be a criminal is someplace with no cops.
This is a perfect storm.
Hundreds of billions of dollars that just poof vanish. It's everybody. It's every bank.
Stay tuned.
The China Hustle.
There's an old joke that the biggest lie on Wall Street is that this time it's different.
In theaters on demand, iTunes, and Amazon Video, March 30th.
So the interesting thing about this story, I'm actually in Pennsylvania, and GeoInvest, the company that discovered this, is actually in Pennsylvania too. Well, they used to be in Skip Pack. So very, very interesting. If you haven't seen the movie, I definitely recommend it. So check it out. Next of all, what about pump and dump schemes? Well, I kind of went over that. That's where people run stocks up in various different ways and then, of course, dump those stocks. And there's so many websites where I've seen stuff like this where there's influencers. Maybe they don't do it on purpose, but when they have a big following, it seems like it's easy for them to recommend something, and basically the stock goes up because people are buying it, and then at the same time these people are probably selling it. Not all of them, just saying. So there's a couple other things that we could look at here, but I'm going to skip the rest of those. Now let's go into another thing. You know, there's so many different companies now that are claiming that you trade for free. And when I first heard about this, I was like, well, this is ridiculous. You're looking at businesses that make hundreds of millions, billions of dollars a year, and nobody's going to let you do something for free. So one of these, and keep in mind, this is not unique, but I'm just showing this because they became very mainstream very quickly with huge advertising. But they claim you trade for free, but this company made $2.04 billion. So if you're trading for free, how are they making money? So obviously there's a problem here. How they're doing it? Bank fees, interest income, transactional based revenue. So they're getting payment for order flow. But still, keep in mind, if technically it's free, how are they generating money? It's not free, and even though you're looking at it as free, you're the product, and they're making a lot more money than if you would have just paid a normal transaction fee that most type of brokerages would use. My opinion here once again. Now let's look at Citadel Securities, which is one of the market makers that has their own dark pool. They paid a $1 million fine for improper reporting. This is a company here that basically had 42 billion inaccurate reporting information, and for a $1 million fine. The question is, how much money did these people steal? And also, why is it every time somebody gets in trouble for something like this, they get a fine? The fine is always so small that it doesn't even matter. And what really needs to happen is there needs to be an investigation. How much money was stolen, and all the money needs to be returned to the people it was stolen from. And all this information is in their computer system. But it's amazing, let's just say. And for some people who still say, well, there's no fraud. Let's see what Ken Griffin here says, because he's in a video here talking about what he does, and you can make a decision.
Investing is actually rooted in the theory that markets are efficient, and that markets are efficient because of active managers setting the prices of securities. Firms like Citadel, firms like Fidelity, firms like Viking Global, Capital Research. We're all running large teams of people that are engaged in fundamental research, trying to drive the value of companies towards where we think they should be valued. And passive investing, in a sense, enjoys the market efficiency that we create in our work each and every day. And one of the things that's very frustrating in Washington, D.C. is actually the regulatory weight being placed on active managers by the SEC, who are in this moment where they've introduced 50 new rules in proposal or final form over the last roughly 18 months. It's almost as if they're in a jihad against active management and the active allocation of capital in the United States. That hurts passive investors. That hurts the ability for companies to raise capital at the right price, to create jobs and to build factories. It's really like, you asked, what would I change in Washington? I would ask that our agencies run through the lens of how do we embolden American businesses to win.
Geez, I don't know. You can make your own decision, but you could probably determine what my opinion is on what he just said. Now let's look at Charles Gasparino, one of my favorite people here on Fox. Well, first of all, a long time ago, he used to actually say that there was fraud in the stock market. And so let's see what he used to say years ago.
Yesterday, speaking before the Senate Banking Committee, Cox basically said, listen, we are looking at the issue of naked shorting, examining it as part of our broad examination of hedge funds. I think this is really interesting. Listen, Cox stopped short of saying he's going to charge someone with a violation. And by the way, this is a very legal, very gray area in the SEC's
naked shorting?
Yeah, I mean, no one really knows just where it sits as far as the illegality of it. However, he did say he's going to give it a fair hearing, and he may do some rulemaking on this later on. And I think that's a big victory for Patrick Byrne, because the more this thing gets aired, the more it becomes a politically divisive issue. And what really surprises me is just how politically active Patrick Byrne and some of these companies that are targeted by the naked short sellers have become. That, in a Senate hearing, that naked short selling becomes one of the main issues. Yesterday, speaking before the Senate Banking Committee, Cox basically said, listen, we are looking at the issue.
Apparently, he used to say that naked short selling is a problem. Now he's been for years defending the stock market and saying investors are just stupid people and that's why they're losing money. Let's see what he currently is saying right here.
Andrew Left is guilty of something, then just about everybody I know that appears on CNBC is guilty too. Andrew Left is guilty of something, then just about everybody I know that appears on CNBC is guilty too.
So, well, at least he told the truth this time. He's stating that, most people are probably doing something illegal. It's funny to hear him have a statement like this, and somebody just copied it, of course, and set it up as a reel that it plays over. Another example, Charles posting here that he took his kids to the movie, and basically nobody's going to the movies. I ran, talk about the company, thanks investors, see y'all losing your money. Ridiculous. Because if anybody looks at the stats for AMC, they've actually been doing very good, and the movie theaters have been doing much, much better. And this takes me back to another topic that I mentioned. Basically, 1990s, BlackRock started creating a computer algorithm to quote unquote control the market and make a lot of money in the stock market. And who can argue that they've been doing very well? But the question is, at the expense of what? So let's listen to this to educate you on their computer system, Aladdin.
What if I told you there is a robot that controls more wealth than any country on earth? A robot so powerful that in the last 10 years, it has quietly created the biggest company in the world. This is the story of a robot called Aladdin. It's Wall Street's best kept secret, and it's gobbling up every asset class across every industry. Aladdin now controls $21 trillion of our global economy. To put that in perspective, that's more than the $20 trillion GDP of the US or the $15 trillion GDP of the entire European Union. The New Statesman wrote, the total physical cash of all 7 billion people and every company, bank vault, wallet, and piggy bank in the world is around $5 trillion. Aladdin has grown into a system responsible for more than 4 times the value of all the money in the world. This one robot directs the actions of the US Federal Reserve, almost every major bank and investment fund on Wall Street, and over 17,000 traders. It controls half of all ETFs, 17% of the bond market, 10% of the global stock market, and carries out 250,000 trades every day and billions of forecasts every week. Year after year, it hoovers up trillions of data points on every market, every company, every asset, and now even each of us, what we buy, sell, and say, so that it knows what to buy and what to sell far better than any human being. Every major bank, company, and investment fund has come to rely on Aladdin and its all-powerful AI and algorithms to beat the market. And if they didn't, they've collapsed and failed in Aladdin's wake. And you know what the craziest part of this story is? This robot is just getting started. So where did Aladdin come from and how did it get so powerful? Aladdin is the brainchild of Larry Fink, the founder of BlackRock, and its total dominance has made his company the biggest shadow bank in the world and the most powerful company on earth. The story you're about to hear is equally unbelievable and terrifying. In fact, you would think it was science fiction if it wasn't very real and happening today. This story starts in the 1980s when Larry Fink was making millions pioneering mortgage-backed securities at Wall Street Bank First Boston. That's right, the same mortgage-backed securities that caused the 2008 global financial crisis 20 years later. But back in the 80s, he was in an epic Wall Street rivalry with Louis Ranieri at Salomon Brothers, made famous as the big swinging dick in Michael Lewis's book Liar's Poker. Back then, Larry was making millions for the bank and was on track to be First Boston's CEO. And then in 1986, an error in the back office computer models led to Larry making the wrong trades and he lost the company $100 million. The result was Larry leaving the bank as a failure with a stupid computer to blame. With that experience, Larry had just one ambition: to build a super smart robot that could pick out risk and opportunity in the market and do it better than any computer or human could do. In 1988, he launched a new startup, BlackRock, with a tiny coding team to give birth to this robot. Its name, Aladdin, which stands for Asset, Liability, and Debt Derivative Investment Network. In its first 10 years, Aladdin was fed information about every asset, price movement, and risk variable in the global bond market, Larry's specialty. And in 1999, when Aladdin turned 11, Aladdin was getting so intelligent at picking losers and winners that Larry began selling access to its data to other Wall Street firms. That same year, he took BlackRock public on the New York Stock Exchange. Straight after the IPO, the dot-com bust burst, pushing a wall of money from the stock market to bonds, which Aladdin had become the undisputed world champion in. Within years, BlackRock had become a $1 trillion company, and as money started shifting back to shares, what did Larry do? He bought the asset management arm of Merrill Lynch, which was focused to shares. So the gift for Aladdin's 18th birthday, all the data points for the entire stock market, and suddenly Aladdin had a new playground, analyzing every stock trade and risk factor for every company on the stock market. As a result, today BlackRock, together with his 2 closest rivals, Vanguard and State Street, both of which also rely on Aladdin's mountain of knowledge, have become the biggest shareholders of over 40% of all public listed companies in America. 2008, the global financial crisis hits, and before Aladdin turns 21 years old, is caught on by every Wall Street bank and Timothy Geithner, the head of the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury. As soon as Lehman Brothers collapsed and the Wall Street meltdown began, the US government came calling to save the next collapsing bank, Bear Stearns. It was Aladdin who decided which assets to keep and which to leave in the $30 billion rescue package. And few people know it was a robot that saved America from disaster. With that first success, the Fed, US government, and now even European and Japanese central banks began relying on Aladdin to make the calls on where the $2.5 trillion of new money they printed should go. The majority of it, bonds and funding to prop up the mortgage companies and banks. But wait, aren't these exactly the assets that Aladdin and BlackRock already were invested in? Exactly. But growing protests of conflict of interest were drowned out by the noise of the printing presses printing more money, as the assets controlled by Aladdin rapidly grew to $11 trillion by 2013. In the last decade, Aladdin Aladdin has gone from the leader to the dominator of all financial markets. With BlackRock's Barclays acquisition, it got iShares, Barclays Exchange Traded Funds Units, or ETFs. And with that, Aladdin moved from dominator of bonds and equities to dominator of ETFs, just as all the biggest investors shifted from mutual funds to ETFs. And that's when, in 2017, everything changed. On Aladdin's 29th birthday, Larry launched a top-secret project at BlackRock, codenamed Monarch. It led to the firing of his fund managers and replacing their funds with Aladdin's funds. The robot was now eliminating humans from the equation altogether. And as a result, today over 70% of all trades on US stock markets are decided by robots, with Aladdin leading the way. These trades are completed from beginning to end without a human involved, in high-frequency trading far faster than a human can execute. Now, if this was just a story about a robot taking over the job of Wall Street traders, you might not be so concerned, unless you're one of those traders. But in the last 3 years, as Aladdin hit $20 trillion in assets, incredibly, it has begun to consume and control at an even faster rate. First, in 2020, as Aladdin turned 32 years old, the US government and Federal Reserve again came calling as the pandemic hit. Aladdin was again the one to guide the nation in what was now $4 trillion of newly printed money. Where did the money go this time? Inexplicably, for the first time, the Fed began buying ETFs in 2020. Well, that's a little strange. And again, the cries of conflict of interest were drowned out by the money printing. And then Aladdin revealed its endgame. Recently, BlackRock acquired eFront, which collects data on the things that you and I own, including private equity and real estate. And since then, Aladdin has consumed eFront's data on the entire global real estate market. And yep, you guess what happened next. Over the last 2 years, BlackRock and other funds using Aladdin's data have begun buying up single-family homes, where they can afford to outbid the rest of us as they have unlimited financing at hyper-low interest rates. The result is home prices rising by 20% over the last 2 years and pushing now even big players like Zillow out of the market. And here we see Aladdin's endgame, to be the one hyper-intelligent AI robot that not just controls Wall Street assets, but all assets, public and private. Now, I'm not into conspiracy theories, but even a skeptic with eyes wide open can see the signs. We're already at a point where no one can compete without Aladdin. As CEOs and asset managers like Anthony Malloy are now saying, Aladdin is like oxygen. Without it, we wouldn't be able to function. And what about government regulation? Well, Joe Biden has appointed BlackRock executive Brian Deese as head of the National Economic Council, which basically means the oversight of Aladdin and BlackRock is now the responsibility of BlackRock. And Biden has also appointed BlackRock Chief of Staff, Wally Adeyemo, to be Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, which means BlackRock is now the Treasury as well as the Treasury Advisor. And this story is far from over. The genie is out of the bottle. And Aladdin has already reached a tipping point where one robot controls more wealth than any person or country. But as Aladdin's AI capabilities continue to grow, and with its rate of control rising by another $1 trillion to $2 trillion in new assets every year, it looks inevitable that Wall Street's secret weapon could end up owning everything, and we end up owning nothing. So what do you think? Are you indifferent, surprised, angry, afraid, or have a different point of view? And if you found this interesting, if not a little alarming, before you go, do subscribe so I can keep you updated with more news on the exploits and adventures of Aladdin.
Okay, kind of interesting. So for a lot of people who might be looking at this for the first time and think maybe this is fake, it's definitely not. Do a little research. But the scary thing about this is it doesn't even have to be this complex. If you don't understand what happened, 2010 there was a flash crash from a guy in Britain named Navinder Saro. I might be saying that right. But this guy caused a $1 trillion flash crash in his home. And I want to keep in mind that when you're looking at this news, I don't know why they lie, but it seems like everybody says he was self-taught. He actually started at a small little stock trading firm. And I think what actually happened is he realized that most of the big players were all doing fraudulent things to make money or guarantee money in the stock market. So since he had some computer knowledge, he actually made a computer system that basically spoofed the market. And by doing so, he can guarantee profitability. What happened with his computer system is, I don't know if he programmed it wrong that day or he did something, but he was making millions of dollars and something happened and it just spoofed the market so bad that it caused a flash crash. So this is someone to look into if you aren't familiar with it, Navinder Saro. Keep in mind, here's a guy who used a single laptop to crash the market. So when people are talking about market manipulation, saying it's not possible or this and that, well, we have Kenny here, who has his own dark pool and states that they manipulate the market in the direction they want. And you have a guy here who could do it himself just with a single laptop. So question is, what can you do now? There's a Twitter site, which if you look this up, Heist of the Century, AMC, they're posting information, they have YouTube videos, and they are allowing people who've had problems with AMC to file with them, alongside of them. So if you ever had any problems or just curious, go to X/Twitter, AMC HOTC, and they have something called Project Popcorn. I don't know if they're 100% related, but you should check both of those out. The other thing that you can do, and I will have a link for this, is change.org. This was started by Turf Investor. They're basically trying to ban Citadel Securities and investigate them for fraud. They're up to 21,944 signatures. Close to the goal. You can go there. I'll put a link in the description to sign this petition. The other thing is, if you are aware of any stock market fraud, you can submit a whistleblower complaint and get paid to submit a whistleblower complaint. Keep in mind there's two ways to do it. One, if you want to be anonymous, you have to get an attorney to help you. But two, if you don't want to be anonymous, you can still get paid, but then it's disclosed who you are submitting this complaint. But I'll have a link in the description for the SEC, Security Exchange. So I wish this was better, but I'm sharing it anyways because I saw videos with Gary Gensler and they're asking him about whistleblower complaints, and it did not make me optimistic about submitting one ever, even though I have. But do it anyways. Also, if you're not a fan of Gary Gensler, look up the political candidates that are running this election, because one is supportive to do more to combat stock market fraud, and the other one is probably doing nothing because they've been in this in here for 4 years. The other thing you can do is, if you feel you've had a problem with AMC in particular, and I know I have shared some information with AMC, here's a direct number for John Eichhorn. This is for AMC only, by the way, but his direct contact information, you can call him, you can let him know the problems you have with AMC. There's currently an investigation with AMC stock. That's why I mentioned AMCProjectPopcorn.com. And this contact in particular, because he is one of the people investigating. If you call him, leave a message, let him know what problems you've had with fraud or what you believe happened, how much money you potentially lost. That could be helpful, because when you're doing an active investigation, it's important for the people investigating to understand where the people are coming from, and of course you are one of the people. So I know I provide a lot of information. I'm going to have links to a lot of things that I have. Comment below, let me know. Do you think there's stock market fraud, or do you think there's no stock market fraud and all of us retail people are just dumb because we just picked the wrong things? Maybe we can't read. I don't know exactly. But it's Pete from the Small Business Resource Center and the Small Business Resource Center YouTube channel. You can also subscribe if you want to get updated on more videos. Have a great day, and I hope you take some action, because any action you take supports you.